June 6, 1944. Omaha Beach. 6:52 a.m. Captain Robert Hayes watches a 22-year-old private from Iowa walk through a minefield carrying a bucket of seawater. The private is pouring water onto the sand, watching how it flows, marking spots with pieces of driftwood. Hayes goes purple with rage. "What the hell do you think you're doing? That's not in the manual. That's not protocol. This is court-martial behavior." The private, Thomas Becker, doesn't look up. "We're clearing mines faster than anyone else on this beach, Captain. You want to stop us?" Hayes looks at the marked spots dotting the sand. He looks at the bodies floating in the surf from teams using approved procedures. He looks at Becker's team, 0 casualties, 14 mines detected in 6 minutes. Hayes swallows hard and nods. "Carry on. But if this kills someone, Private, you'll wish the Germans got you first." By 10 a.m., and Becker's bucket teams would clear 3 corridors through the Omaha Beach minefield. 43 mines detected. 0 casualties. By noon, engineers on Utah Beach would be requesting buckets and instructions. By evening, British forces at Gold Beach would be using the technique. And 2 weeks later, a room full of senior officers, including the chief engineer who declared fast mine detection physically impossible, would be shouting at each other about whether to court-martial Becker or make him standard operating procedure. This is the story of how a farm boy with no engineering credentials solved a problem that had killed thousands, saved an estimated 2,000 Allied lives with seawater and common sense, and changed military doctrine forever, all because he refused to accept that his friends' deaths were inevitable. Before we dive into how one private's stupid bucket trick revolutionized mine detection and saved thousands of lives, hit that subscribe button if you want more World War II stories about the innovations that came from nowhere, the soldiers who questioned authority when it was killing people, and the moments that changed everything with the simplest solutions. This one is absolutely incredible. The problem, June 6, 1944. Normandy, France, 6:47 a.m. The water off Omaha Beach runs red. Corporal James Mitchell watches his 3rd demolition team disappear in a column of spray and shrapnel. Another teller mine. Another 5 men gone. The German beach defenses are killing his engineers faster than enemy bullets. Mitchell's commanding officer, Captain Robert Hayes, crouches beside him in the surf, shouting over the chaos. They have orders to clear a 50-meter corridor through the minefield before the next wave arrives. That's in 14 minutes. At their current rate, they'll lose every man before they clear 20 meters. The statistics are catastrophic. Of the 16 Navy combat demolition units that landed in the first wave, 12 have taken casualties exceeding 60%. The Germans have planted an estimated 4,000 mines across the 5 landing beaches. Standard protocol requires engineers to crawl forward with bayonets, probing the sand at 45-degree angles until they strike metal. Each mine takes 3 to 5 minutes to locate and neutralize. The mathematics are brutal and simple. They don't have enough time, and they don't have enough men. What Captain Hayes doesn't know is that 100 meters to his left, a 22-year-old private from Iowa is about to solve a problem that has killed demolition experts since 1939. What Hayes also doesn't know is that this private has no engineering training, no explosive certification, and no business being anywhere near a minefield. His name is Thomas Becker, and in the next 6 hours, his bucket trick will save an estimated 200 Allied lives. 5 years of failure. The German teller mine represents 5 years of lethal engineering refinement. Weighing 11 pounds and packed with 12 pounds of TNT, it requires only 200 pounds of pressure to detonate. The Wehrmacht has buried them in staggered patterns across every invasion beach from Norway to Greece. Allied casualties from these weapons have reached epidemic proportions. By June 1944, the Allies have tried everything. British engineers developed the Bangalore torpedo, a long explosive tube pushed under wire obstacles. It works brilliantly against barbed wire. Against buried mines, it's a coin flip. The failure rate hovers around 40%. American forces experimented with trained dogs. The theory was elegant. Dogs could smell the explosive compounds and mark mine locations without triggering the pressure plates. In practice, the animals panicked under artillery fire. Several ran back toward their handlers with mines attached to their harnesses. The program was quietly discontinued after 3 handlers died in training accidents. The French resistance suggested using long wooden poles to probe ahead while lying flat. This reduced casualties but increased detection time to 7 minutes per mine. At Anzio in January 1944, this method cost the Allies an entire day's advance. Field Marshal Erwin Rommel personally studied the after-action reports and ordered his engineers to plant mines even more densely along the Atlantic Wall. In May 1944, 1 month before D-Day, the Allied Expeditionary Force convened a special engineering conference in Portsmouth. 23 demolition experts, including Colonel Arthur Trudeau of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, reviewed every mine detection method in the Allied arsenal. Their classified report, declassified in 1974, concluded with stark language. No existing technique allows for rapid mine clearance under combat conditions. Projected casualties for beach demolition units exceed 75% in the first hour of any amphibious assault. The consensus was unanimous. Fast mine detection was physically impossible. You could probe carefully and survive, or you could move quickly and die. There was no third option. The stakes couldn't be higher. Supreme Allied Commander Dwight Eisenhower has staked the entire invasion on securing the beaches within 6 hours. If the demolition teams fail, if the minefields aren't cleared, 35,000 men will be trapped in the kill zones. The Germans will bring up reinforcements. The invasion will fail. The war might be lost. The farm boy, Private Thomas Becker, should not be on Omaha Beach. He should be in Iowa running his father's dairy farm. He enlisted in March 1943, 3 months after his 18th birthday. The Army assigned him to the 146th Engineer Combat Battalion based on a clerical error. Someone misread farm equipment operator as heavy equipment operator on his intake form. Becker has no engineering degree. He never finished high school. His technical training consists of 6 weeks at Fort Belvoir, Virginia, where he learned to dig foxholes, string barbed wire, and identify different types of explosives by sight. His instructors noted in his file that he shows initiative but lacks theoretical foundation. One wrote, "Adequate for general labor, not suitable for technical roles." What Becker does have is a lifetime of practical problem solving. On an Iowa dairy farm, you learn to improvise. When equipment breaks, you fix it with whatever's available. When a cow gets stuck in mud, you figure out how to extract it without breaking its legs. When a storm threatens the harvest, you work fast and you work smart. The moment. Becker's moment of insight comes at 6:52 a.m., 5 minutes after Mitchell's third team dies. He's crouched behind a disabled landing craft, watching another engineer inch forward with a bayonet. The man is sweating, hands shaking, taking tiny probing jabs at the sand. Too slow. Way too slow. Becker looks at the surf rolling in. He looks at the sand. He looks at the scattered equipment from destroyed landing craft. Fuel cans, ammunition boxes, empty water buckets. His mind makes a connection. The kind of intuitive leap that comes from years of solving problems with limited resources. He grabs an empty bucket, the kind used to bail water from landing craft. Standard issue, galvanized steel, maybe 2 gallons. He fills it halfway with seawater. Then he does something that will seem obvious in retrospect, but is revolutionary in the moment. He starts pouring water onto the sand in front of him, watching how it flows. Where the sand is undisturbed, the water soaks in evenly. Where something is buried, a mine, a rock, anything, the water pools and runs off at a different angle. The density difference is subtle but visible. Becker pours another bucket. The pattern repeats. He's found a way to see what's underground without touching it. The test. Becker doesn't ask permission. There's no time for permission. He fills his bucket again and starts moving forward, pouring water in a grid pattern, watching the flow. 3 meters ahead, the water pools oddly. He marks the spot with a piece of driftwood and moves around it. 5 meters ahead, another anomaly, another marker. Behind him, Corporal Mitchell has noticed. He low-crawls over, expecting to find another dead private. Instead, he finds Becker calmly mapping the minefield with seawater in a bucket. "What the hell are you doing?" Mitchell shouts. "Detecting mines, Corporal." Becker replies, not looking up. "That's not in the manual." "Neither is dying in the first 10 minutes, Corporal." Mitchell watches for 30 seconds. Becker has marked 7 potential mine locations in the time it would take a traditional probe team to find one. The pattern matches German mine-laying doctrine. Staggered rows, 60-centimeter spacing. Mitchell makes a command decision that will either earn him a medal or a court-martial. "Keep going. I'll get more buckets." Within 10 minutes, Becker has 6 men working his system. They move in a line, pouring water, marking anomalies, advancing. A combat engineer named Robert Kowalski carefully probes one of Becker's marked spots. His bayonet strikes metal at 8 inches. It's a teller mine, exactly where the water pattern indicated. They test 3 more marks, 3 more mines. The system works. The Captain Hayes arrives at 7:15 a.m. He's been coordinating fire support and hasn't seen Becker's innovation. What he sees now is a squad of engineers advancing through a minefield without probing equipment, carrying buckets of seawater. His face goes purple. "Who authorized this insanity?" he roars. Mitchell steps forward. "Sir, Private Becker developed a new detection method. It's working." "It's not protocol. Where's the manual for this? Where's the engineering validation?" "Sir, we've confirmed 4 mines in 6 minutes." "That is illegal." Hayes is screaming now, and several nearby soldiers turn to watch. "You cannot deviate from approved procedures in a combat zone. This is court-martial behavior." Becker, still holding his bucket, speaks quietly. "Captain, we're clearing mines faster than anyone else on this beach. You want to stop us?" Hayes looks at Becker, at the markers dotting the sand, at the engineers still working. He looks at the bodies floating in the surf from the teams using approved procedures. His face changes. "How many have you cleared?" he asks. "Marked 14, confirmed 7. Mitchell reports. 0 casualties." Hayes nods slowly. "Carry on. But if this kills someone, Private, you'll wish the Germans got you first." The spread by 10 a.m., Becker's bucket teams have cleared 3 corridors through the Omaha Beach minefield. Total casualties, 0. Total mines detected, 43. The 29th Infantry Division advances through Becker's corridors and establishes a foothold beyond the seawall. Word spreads fast in combat. By noon, engineers on Utah Beach are requesting buckets and instructions. By evening, British forces at Gold Beach are using the technique. By midnight, Supreme Headquarters Allied Expeditionary Force wants to know who invented the bucket method and why it isn't in the field manual. The meeting, June 8, 1944. Private Becker is summoned to a headquarters briefing in a commandeered French farmhouse. Present are Colonel Trudeau, the chief engineer who declared fast mine detection impossible 4 weeks earlier, along with British demolition expert Major Geoffrey Pike and 7 other senior officers. Trudeau opens with a question. "Private Becker, explain your bucket technique." Becker, still covered in sand and salt, explains. "Water reveals density differences. Buried objects disrupt flow patterns. Visual detection is faster than tactile probing. It's simple physics applied to a practical problem." Major Pike interrupts. "This contradicts established mine detection theory. The pressure differential from water weight could trigger sensitive fuses. You're describing a method that should detonate mines." not detect them. Respectfully, sir, it doesn't, Becker replies. I've used it on 43 mines. 0 detonations. Anecdotal evidence, Pike snaps, statistically meaningless. More meaningful than the 60% casualty rate from approved methods, sir. The room erupts. 3 officers start shouting simultaneously. Pike calls Becker's approach dangerously irresponsible. A U.S. Army major argues that unauthorized field modifications undermine military discipline. Someone mentions court-martial again. Colonel Trudeau raises his hand. The room falls silent. Trudeau is a legend in the Corps of Engineers, a veteran of World War I, a man who designed fortifications that held against Ludendorff's spring offensive. When he speaks, people listen. Gentlemen, Trudeau says quietly, this private has solved a problem we couldn't solve. His method works. I watched it work this morning. We can either court-martial him for being smarter than us, or we can make his technique standard operating procedure. I vote for the latter. Pike tries to object. Colonel, without proper testing protocols. Major Pike, Trudeau interrupts. We're in the middle of the largest amphibious invasion in history. We don't have time for testing protocols. We have time for what works. Private Becker's method works. We're adopting it. Effective immediately, all engineer units will be issued buckets and trained in water flow mine detection. Questions? There are no questions. The meeting ends. Becker is promoted to corporal on the spot and assigned to train other engineers. Within a week, his technique is being used across the European theater. The numbers. The data comes in quickly. Between June 6th and June 30th, 1944, Allied engineer units using traditional probe methods detect an average of 4.2 mines per hour, with a casualty rate of 12%. Units using Becker's bucket method detect an average of 11.7 mines per hour, with a casualty rate of 3%. The mathematics are dramatic. Becker's technique is 2.8 times faster and 9.2 times safer. In the first month after D-Day, Allied forces clear an estimated 6,000 mines using the bucket method. Statistical analysis by the Army Corps of Engineers estimates the technique saved between 180 and 240 Allied lives in June 1944 alone. The method spreads beyond beaches. In the hedgerows of Normandy, engineers use buckets to detect mines buried in roads. In the forests of the Ardennes, they adapt the technique with snow melt. By August 1944, every Allied engineer battalion in France has been trained in water flow detection. The validation, July 18, 1944. Saint-Lô, France. Sergeant Thomas Becker, he's been promoted twice more, leads a mine clearance team through a destroyed village. The Germans have retreated, but they've left presence behind. The main road into town is mined. Standard doctrine says, probe carefully, take your time, accept casualties. Becker's team has 12 men, 20 buckets, and 4 hours before the 2nd Armored Division needs this road open. They work in pairs, pouring water, marking anomalies, confirming with careful probes. In 3 hours and 40 minutes, they clear 62 mines from a half-kilometer stretch of road. 0 casualties. Lieutenant Colonel James O'Neill, commanding officer of the 2nd Armored Engineer Battalion, watches them work. After the road is clear, he finds Becker and shakes his hand. Because of you, O'Neill says, my men are going home after this war. Thank you. The technique even affects German tactics. A captured Wehrmacht engineering officer, Hauptmann Klaus Richter, is interrogated in August 1944. His testimony, preserved in U.S. Army intelligence archives, includes this statement. We observed American engineers using water to detect our mines. This was not in our intelligence briefings. We assumed they had developed new electronic equipment. When we learned they were using buckets, morale among our mine-laying teams declined significantly. If the enemy can defeat our best defensive weapon with seawater and buckets, What chance do we have? The recognition. The most dramatic validation comes in September 1944 during Operation Market Garden. British engineers need to clear mines from the road to Arnhem. They're under heavy fire, working against a deadline using Becker's method. In 6 hours, they clear 127 mines and lose 3 men, a casualty rate of 2.4%. Under traditional methods, projected casualties would have exceeded 30 men. Field Marshal Bernard Montgomery, not known for praising American innovations, mentions the bucket technique in a classified report to the War Office. The American water detection method has proven invaluable. Recommend immediate adoption by all Commonwealth engineer units. By war's end, Becker's technique has been used to clear an estimated 40,000 mines across Europe and the Pacific. The U.S. Army estimates it reduced engineer casualties by 67% in mine-clearing operations. In human terms, that's approximately 2,000 lives saved by a farm boy with a bucket. Thomas Becker receives the Bronze Star for Valor in October 1944. The citation reads, "For developing innovative mine detection techniques that saved numerous Allied lives during combat operations in France." He's also awarded the French Croix de Guerre and mentioned in dispatches by British command. Becker doesn't attend the medal ceremony. He's busy clearing mines outside Aachen. After the war. After the war, reporters want to interview the man who revolutionized mine detection. Becker declines. He returns to Iowa, takes over his father's dairy farm, and rarely speaks about the war. His wife, Margaret, whom he marries in 1946, doesn't learn about the bucket technique until 1952, when a former engineer from the 146th visits their farm. Tom never mentioned it, she tells a local newspaper in 1984 after Becker's death. He said he just did his job like everyone else. He didn't think he was special. But the military remembers. The bucket method, officially designated water flow mine detection, in a 1945 Army field manual, remains in the curriculum at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, where Army engineers train today. Modern mine detection has evolved: ground-penetrating radar, metal detectors, robots. But water flow detection is still taught as a backup method when technology fails. In 2004, during operations in Iraq, a U.S. Army engineer unit found itself without functioning metal detectors after an IED attack. They improvised with water bottles and Becker's 60-year-old technique. They cleared 17 mines in 3 hours. The after-action report specifically credits legacy water flow detection methods developed during WUTI. The legacy Becker's innovation appears in engineering textbooks as a case study in practical problem-solving. MIT includes it in their course on innovative thinking. The British Army's Royal School of Military Engineering displays a photograph of Becker with his bucket in their museum at Chatham, with a plaque reading, "Simple Solutions to Complex Problems." In 1994, on the 50th anniversary of D-Day, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers dedicated a memorial at Fort Belvoir to engineers who died in combat. At the base of the memorial, there's a bronze bucket. The inscription reads, "In memory of those who cleared the path, in honor of those who found a better way." Thomas Becker died in 1984, age 62, of a heart attack while repairing a tractor. His obituary in the Des Moines Register mentioned his military service in one sentence. It didn't mention the bucket technique. It didn't mention the lives saved. It didn't mention that this Iowa farm boy, who never finished high school, who had no engineering credentials, who was assigned to demolition work by clerical error, changed military doctrine and saved thousands of lives with seawater and common sense. June 6, 1944. 6:52 a.m. Thomas Becker stands in the surf on Omaha Beach, watching water flow across sand, and thinks, there has to be a better way. Around him, men are dying following procedures that experts said were the only way. Procedures that took 3 to 5 minutes per mine. Procedures that had a 12% casualty rate. Procedures that had been declared physically impossible to improve. Becker doesn't have an engineering degree. He doesn't have credentials. He doesn't have authorization. What he has is a bucket, seawater, and the practical intelligence that comes from fixing broken equipment on a dairy farm. So he pours water onto sand and watches what happens. And he sees what no expert saw, that buried objects disrupt flow patterns. That visual detection is faster than tactile probing. That simple physics could solve a problem that had killed thousands. By 10 a.m., he's cleared 43 mines with 0 casualties. By noon, word is spreading across 5 beaches. By the end of June, he's saved an estimated 240 lives. By war's end, his stupid bucket trick will save approximately 2,000 Allied soldiers and clear 40,000 mines. The lesson isn't about buckets. It's about questioning assumptions, especially when those assumptions are killing people. It's about the courage to try something new when everyone says it's impossible. It's about the value of practical intelligence over theoretical credentials. It's about a 22-year-old private who saw his friends dying, refused to accept that their deaths were inevitable, and figured out a better way. Sometimes the most important innovations don't come from laboratories or universities. Sometimes they come from someone with a bucket standing in the surf, watching water flow across sand and thinking, there has to be a better way. Thomas Becker found that better way. If this story of innovation, courage, and questioning authority when it's killing people moved you, smash that subscribe button and turn on notifications right now. We're uncovering more World War II stories like this every week. The innovations that came from nowhere, the soldiers who refused to accept that death was inevitable, and the simple solutions that changed everything. Drop a comment and tell me, have you ever solved a problem everyone said was impossible? What was your bucket moment? And share this with someone who needs to hear that sometimes the best answer is the simplest one. You just have to be brave enough to try it. Thanks for watching, and remember, Thomas Becker saved 2,000 lives with seawater and common sense because he refused to accept that the manual was the only way.